And from that point forward, we had just a tremendous relationship. And he was always surprised that I called him so soon. But I was just curious. I'm like, this guy is very successful. I want to learn from him, and how he has been successful.
Welcome to Bold Breakthroughs that unstick work and life. I'm Mark Cook, New York Times bestselling innovator. Each week I offer keynotes that engage thousands. Then teams embed me weekly to unstick tech pivots, sales prospects, and ops constraints. We roll up our sleeves in small groups to create breakthroughs on top priorities for each individual, in person or via Zoom. 9 global studies of over 2 million successes have fueled my 4,000 wins at top brands. I've shared rapid innovation in over 50 cities worldwide. Teams create revenue breakthroughs and clients see new profits. Thank you for listening and inspiring your breakthrough today. I'd like to welcome Sean Milner, Senior Vice President of Sales of Avochato. And Sean, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing very well, Mark. Really appreciate the time and having me on today.
Why don't we go way back at the beginning? You're coming out of the University of Colorado, you've got your degree, and you jump into a very entry-level sales position, which is actually a much more difficult position than most people step into. Tell me a little bit about the job and some of the challenges that you faced with it.
Yeah, thank you. I was very fortunate in that I applied to a lot of different jobs. I didn't really know what career path I wanted, and I landed in a entry level sales position at Spectralogic in Boulder, Colorado, cold calling people all day. And so it was really a sales development role. And back in those days, we basically had a database of prospective customers, people we may have talked to in the past, cold outreach, and we were expected to make 100 dials a day. Every day, 5 days a week. And it was a lot of fun. I still talk to a lot of the peers who I started and worked with during that time. And I learned some really important skills, right? I learned how to be persistent, how to be relevant and valuable to customers, and really the tenacity of that, and learning the value of maintaining a pipeline and being able to talk and converse with people and align to their objectives was a key skill that I learned back then. But I do remember Fridays were rough after 40 plus hours of nonstop cold calling. I definitely enjoyed getting off of work on Friday and spending some time with the family after a long week of rejection.
So, our audience is a little broader than sales, but I think one of the great things that salespeople bring into this conversation of getting stuck in some priority at work and then making a breakthrough that's highly successful is this difficult task that you stepped right into in work life. And there are a lot of difficult things. A product developer might, in IT anyway, might have to write a lot of lines of codes, be relegated the feature that no one really cares about, that's kind of difficult, and be lonely and frustrated at times. But the idea of, hey, sit in the seat, make 100 calls. If you beat it, you're going to get a pat on the back. If you don't, it's not going to be a comfortable situation is an interesting thing for other types of jobs and people and roles to peek into. So I'm going to give you, since you were a salesperson, all that positivity that we'll get to in a minute, but kind of chuckle. The reason I got a big grin is because you said it was a lot of fun. And I assume that meant all the people and the environment and the challenge, not necessarily hitting call. Tell me a little bit about some of the frustrations that you face doing that kind of work.
Yeah, it was fun in that the people, and I'm a very competitive person, so looking at the leaderboard and trying to finish the week on the top of the leaderboard was energizing for me. But yeah, challenging in that it was very, very monotonous, right? And so really trying to just grind through, find creative things, or when you did actually connect with somebody, having a fun conversation. It was a lot of little things that that broke up the monotony and kind of the repetitiveness of that particular type of a role. And so, yeah, it was just exhausting by the end of the week. I'd come home on Friday and, crash for an hour and then, take my wife out to dinner and kind of enjoy the weekend. But it was definitely a grind, and it was monotonous, and it was very, very challenging mentally to stay focused. And, when you did get somebody live, really just kind of click on and engage in a meaningful conversation, even though you maybe just got, told to never call somebody again, right? Don't waste my time. So, just dealing with that rejection, and then, bouncing back and having a positive conversation right after that was a definite challenge as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that so early, right out of college, that was a rude awakening. Tell me, let's talk about the conversations that you got to sometimes. But before we do that, tell me if there was anything that you did that maybe you take for granted that's pretty typical in your mind, but isn't typical for all types of workers out in the economy, that helped you keep going, helped you keep focused, helped you keep the velocity and frequency up. Any levers you pulled?
It's really, I think the key thing that I've learned, and maybe didn't know then, but it was inherent in me then, was just helping people, right? I think that, especially in my industry and in technology, you can really benefit people both professionally, right, by solving a business challenge or giving them an opportunity to seize on a growth opportunity, leveraging your technology. And you can also help them personally, right? I've had a couple of customers throughout my career who have been, promoted or had some other positive impact in their life by leveraging, a solution that we put together for them. And so, that's been really the driving factor, is the human element of business, and having a vested interest in helping people achieve positive outcomes. And, that feels really good to matter in someone else's life and have a positive impact on either their professional or personal situation, or even both for that matter.
I think that's a great point. And it's something that all of us that do a job where we have to promote ourselves or get business, I sell at least a quarter of my time in my job, and it's just the nature of it. And that what you said is the challenge. I had a mentor once, Carl Bryan, who said something really wise, and he said that if you can't make 10 calls before 10 a.m. in the morning, you don't have an initiative problem. You don't have a cold calling problem. You don't have a self-starter problem. You have a I don't want to help people problem. And I felt like that was really wise. And so I try to think about that when I get to that part of my day. I don't view it as a mundane, challenging process 2 minutes into it, 2 minutes before I do. But you have to mentally work like you're doing an exercise in a gym, or any other thing in school that you're studying. You have to mentally say, this is something that has to get done. And I know, and I have the faith in this process that if I get 2 minutes into this, I'm going to be engaged in helping other people and developing a relationship with other people. And those rejections will just fall by the wayside. So tell me a little bit about when you did get someone on the line, how you felt, because I think that's a very tiny esoteric piece of this, but it's everything as far as results go. So tell me how, when you got someone, and then what was your thinking, and how did you approach it?
Yeah, great question. Really, it was, I call it kind of inquisitiveness, right? It's a genuine interest in learning, right, about a person, about their role, about their challenges, about opportunity. And even in preparing for a call, researching the company, researching the individual, and again, connecting at a human level, and really just being inquisitive and wanting to learn, right? So that you can take what you learn, apply it, right, and be valuable to that person. And so that is certainly energizing to me. Again, back then, I probably didn't know strategically what that meant, but I know that it felt good, and it was a positive engagement, and people appreciate that, genuineness, and, that true, kind of willingness to learn about them and some of their challenges. And then, you break down a lot of barriers that way, and engage in a meaningful conversation that's, ideally valuable bidirectionally. And so, those are the things that get me really energized from a conversation is, both parties come away saying, hey, that was a great use of 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I'm actually looking forward to, re-engaging at a deeper level.
Yeah, it'd be really easy as a marketing person, which I've been early in my life, in a marketing department doing creative management of others or something that's unrelated to picking up the phone and think, well, gosh, this doesn't really relate to me. I think it does. Sadly, I'm just old enough now and through my career enough. I think it's highly related. I think that anyone in an organization that's over 10 people, especially as you get to 200 people where our social limits really are stretched, it's critical to view opportunities to have a conversation that's meaningful instead of just business talk as a gold mine that needs to be dug and fostered and explored. And it sounds like you do that even in a cold call situation. So how does that progress in your career? You mentioned to me before our conversation that your efforts have progressed and technology's progressed and your ability to relate to others has changed a bit. Tell me about both of those. Tell me the role of technology and how those elements have changed trying to get someone to have a live conversation. And then when you get it today, how Sean Milner is today versus before.
Yeah, I think in the world has changed a lot with the proliferation of information on online, right? So, and the consumerization of technology continues, right? Our Amazon experience, right? We can go in, we can look at a product on Amazon, we can see what other people are saying about that particular product. We have all the information right at our fingertips. And so prospective customers are much more educated, right, prior to engaging with them than they were even 5 years ago. And so the role of a salesperson has dramatically shifted over that time, where we were, providing a lot of this education about our products and our services that customers already know. So we have to now really dig in, learn more about, what they're trying to achieve, teach them how other people are using technology in similar roles and similar industries and the outcomes that those people have achieved leveraging that product or that service. And so, it has evolved into a much more consultative and, educational role than it was in even in the industry, 5 to 10 years ago. And so, looking for people who have the skill, to be tenacious and the drive and the desire to want to do calling and engaging with prospects, but also can flip that switch and become very consultative and with credibility, make a C-level buyer, right, confident and comfortable in making a decision in your favor. So, that's the major thing that I've seen that has changed over the previous years. And then the other big thing is with the proliferation of SaaS technology, right, is most companies now in the SaaS space have a free trial, right? And so customers are able to try that product or try that service before they even talk to a human being, right? And so again, your role then changes, from telling people about your product. They've already experienced it. What do they want to know now? How is this relevant to my business? What are the return on investments that I can expect from this type of a solution? And what are other people doing that I may not be thinking about that I could leverage this solution for? So that's really kind of the evolution, and it feels like we're light years ahead of where we were. This actually happened yesterday. So we had a very, very large, brand name come in through our trial process. And one of our SDRs reached out to the individual, and he was very hesitant to get on a call with us because he didn't want a sales pitch, right? He's like, I'm experiencing the product right now, right? So I don't need to know the value proposition. I found you, and I'm testing the software as we speak.
Before you go on, let me just ask you. So, in your world, SDR at the moment is someone that's a sales development, trying to get a live converse. That's the task, right? Is in your world is still to just we need a live start to a conversation with this person. Is that what their challenge is that they're trying to get him to do?
Yeah, so it was an outreach from our, we try to get a touch point to everyone who comes to us immediately, right? So very quick touch point, being very responsive, offering up, information or things that could be beneficial during this trial. And yeah, during that outreach process, this particular customer was very hesitant to engage, already had a vast amount of knowledge about the industry and the solution. And so we, were able to get 30 minutes of this person's time. Again, a vice president and a Fortune 500, is a busy person. And the way we approached the call was genuine around, hey, we just want to be valuable to you during this trial. What have you found that's challenging? What are you trying to solve for? Would it be helpful if we send you our customer onboarding document that has links that you can click on to find knowledge-based articles, etc. And by the end of the call, this customer was very thankful that we didn't pitch him. He actually said, I deal with dozens of companies per month. His role is really to go find new solutions for this company. And he said, so often I'm just getting unsolicited, pitches. And this was actually refreshing. You were valuable to me in this process. And he was thankful of that. So that's a real world example from an engagement that we had yesterday with a very, very recognizable name brand.
So think benefit first, and everything else will work out, including the money part.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah.
If it's valuable, and those two things have to go together. Is it's got to be really valuable, whatever you're proposing and offering,
yeah.
and you have available to offer. But don't offer it yet. Help first, benefit first. Bring that in as a tool, not as a hammer for everything.
Yeah.
The first thing that caught my attention right off the bat was you said you get back to them right away. And I think this is another interesting point that shows how valuable that statement is, not just for salespeople, but for people that don't even think about it. For example, you and I have done some selling and research marketing, and we're in the customer-facing world. And we know that if we get back to a person within 5 minutes of them interacting in any way, the chances are astronomically higher that we'll actually work together and get to help them more. If we wait past 5 minutes, the probability falls off a cliff because their life has continued and urgencies have presented themselves at their end, right? What's interesting about that is I interviewed the president of the Utah Jazz a little while ago, and I asked him, if you had to name one thing of all the things in your career, most of it in that organization, but some of it at the university level doing sports marketing as well, all that time doing this, essentially, how did you get asked to be president? What's the one thing? And I don't want you to be humble. And you probably would expect some big complex answer from something like that. And he had to think about it for a minute. Luckily we know each other, so we could sit there in silence uncomfortably for a minute. But he said, the one thing is I act immediately. Now I know the whole world says haste makes waste, and you've got to be thoughtful, and I agree with all that. But 90% of the time, if something comes into my purview that is worthwhile and I just act on it immediately and don't wait a second, I get so much further ahead, it makes up for all those mistakes that come from thoughtful procrastination misses. And I thought that was really interesting. It's a very similar kind of concept. Like if you're a salesperson and something shows up, or a marketing person and someone is engaging even online, to just take care of it right then is everything. And he wasn't even talking about marketing. He was talking about all sorts of delivery and operational challenges. Just act on it quickly. I think it's a great lesson.
It is.
Tell me a little bit about the first part of your career and where you first hit a point where you're like, wow, something's got to change. I'm stuck, or I'm obstructed, or I don't love this, or what, the difficult part where you first hit something in your career?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I was very fortunate in that I moved out of the entry-level sales role relatively quickly and moved up into an inside sales position where I was working with our existing customers and, working on them for them on upgrades and different things. And then I moved into a field sales position, and that's where I got noticed in the industry, right? I built some really good relationships, and I was fortunate in that I was working with some really exciting companies and entities, including NASA Jet Propulsion Labs out in Los Angeles. Which is a lot of fun. I'm literally sitting in a room with rocket scientists talking about how our technology can help them accelerate their missions. And so I got recruited into a new company, a startup company called EqualLogic. And when I made that move, I realized that I had some natural skill as sales. I had some natural talent. But I realized that I really hadn't been taught about business or how to sell. And so I learned, when I made that move, we had some of the technology industry's best of the best leaders at that company. And the professionalism and the hardcore way that they approached business was a huge eye-opener for me. Right when I joined the company, we had a regional meeting, and we were doing our quarterly business reviews. I was just going down to present, hey, here's how I'm going to go about my business. But the person who went in front of me didn't have a firm grasp of their business, and that person actually got fired on the spot in front of a whole room of people right before I went to go give my presentation. And at that moment, immediately I'm like, did I make the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life? I had a great job. I was in a low pressure environment, a very family oriented company. And all of a sudden I'm in the big leagues with, some of the biggest executives that you would even recognize still today, firing people for not understanding their business. And at that moment, I had a bit of a panic moment, knowing that my time was up. And I'm like, what's in store for me? And I kind of found it within myself to go, hey, this is how I'm going to learn. Learning is going to be in the struggle. And clearly these people know what they're doing. And so I just went with it and challenged myself to up my game to the level that I wouldn't get scrutinized by these executives. And it was one of the biggest areas of growth in my entire career, because I learned the skills to complement the natural talent that I had been given, and did so in a fun but challenging environment that definitely made people sweat. And it set that bar for high performance and high expectations. And the outcome of that company was actually that we got acquired by Dell for $1.4 billion cash. It was the largest all cash acquisition in IT history to that point. And so it was a great result for everybody, but man, I learned quickly, and I learned in a very difficult manner, that I had to up my game and do so in a short amount of time.
I love that. A couple of things that I'm hearing is we tend to think, and I'm a huge believer in this, purpose and a passion for pursuing something that's super meaningful and valuable both at work and in life is really everything, it feels like to me. But life is designed, it feels like to me, to offer opportunities, plenty of them, where we're running from a tiger rather than running towards someone we love or something we love. And it's just part of the stretching, right?
It is. It is.
People are scary. You always have this hesitation when people have just fired someone else to relate to them and have conversations with them. And yet that's one of your keys as a person, is to trust in your enjoyment and even love of people and wanting to help them and getting to know them and their problems and how you can help. How did you get past the barrier of being scared of these people that are going around with professional guns and hatchets?
Yeah, it was really trust, in the product and the company and in our mission, right? So I think that's important, and that's one of the lessons I've learned having been a part of many companies that are high performance is you have to set lofty expectations and you have to have high expectations of people, but the only way you can get people achieving in that type of an environment is to inspire them and let them know that the challenge and the discomfort and the pain is going to be rewarding, right? And you get people bought into that mission as leaders. People will do amazing things and they'll stretch themselves above and beyond what they even thought they were capable of. And so that was the major lesson that I learned, and I probably wouldn't have learned it because I had been successful to that point in my career, and I was comfortable and confident in what I was doing. And so having that fear and having that pressure forced me to challenge myself to do even better and to go above and beyond where I was in my comfort zone. And without that, and without those people, and without those lessons, I certainly wouldn't be sitting where I am today.
We hear so much about the imposter syndrome. We get in a situation, we don't think that we're good enough. But there's a different version of this as well that's related to what we just talked about, and that is that you were just in an environment with really amazing people that wouldn't have been hired at that organization that you and I know we're talking about, multi-billion computer leading company of all time. You're playing with the best of the best as far as that big capable hiring machine could pull off. So it wasn't really like, oh, I'm not good enough. It's the opposite challenge. Like, wow, these are Olympians, and I had a good time running track in high school. So how did you find the pieces of your own ability and experience and natural abilities that you could put up there, even above them or with them, and feel the confidence you were just describing?
Yeah, it was the main area that I hadn't experienced before was the level of detail and the level of influence over every single engagement with a customer, right? It was, the joke was, what did the prospect have for breakfast, right? It was like that level of detail. And, at that point we called it command and control of our business, right? So again, a lot of that leaned into my natural inclinations around being inquisitive, learning, relating to your customer, becoming a trusted advisor, because in order to have the level of detail that business expected, you had to have somebody willing to give you that information, right? And so it took a lot of the kind of innate capabilities that I had just lucked out with and formalized them, created a process and really allowed me to become much more organized, much more focused, and much more purposeful in how I managed my business and how I interacted with people. It also gave me a lot of confidence to ask impactful and maybe uncomfortable questions, right? And because I had to relay information back to my manager and to the leadership of the company, I had to ask difficult questions, right? And get the answer.
What are some of those?
How much is your budget for this particular project, right? Are you the actual purchaser of this product, or is there some executive who actually needs to make this purchase? Hey, you committed to me to getting a purchase order by this time. You didn't. Why not? What happened? What changed, right? And I learned also the value of asking a difficult question and then shutting up and letting the person talk, right? The old adage, I have one mouth and two ears, use them proportionately. So, strategically asking that difficult question and then being okay with that uncomfortable silence, as you referenced earlier with the president of the Utah Jazz. So a lot of, sales and I think business in general is really being comfortable being uncomfortable, and having the confidence and the relationship, and credibility, right, to do so. And so those were the major lessons that I learned, and it certainly took me from junior varsity track to the Olympics in a very short amount of time.
It's so great. It also makes me think of the very beginning of starting a relationship, whether you're a salesperson or anyone else. A lot of us just kind of go accidentally into this. And I think your training as a salesperson is such a valuable training for developing a relationship in the very beginning in any role, whether it's a new neighbor that moves in or whatever the case may be, a new person in an association or a philanthropy you're working at. I talk about with my sales clients, I also work with tech clients and ops clients, but my sales clients sometimes do have prospecting issues. And in this day and age, we rely a lot on technology, but if you haven't been online and talked to the people that surround that individual that should be the decision maker, and figured out what the people are, who the people are that surround them and are meaningful to them. And that's not just common connections on LinkedIn, because they don't even know their connections. And at this point, none of us really know very many of our connections. But the people that recommend them and support them and that they've recommended, they certainly know those people. And so if you look at some of those people and talk to them, you may get insights on who this person is. And so I talk about the 4 P's of prospecting. You have to get to know the people that surround the person, literally get to know them a bit, and that's a lot of work. And then you also have to figure out what their business priorities are. And there's great clues on LinkedIn about this. People are often describing a project set over time that you can tell a trajectory. And so some comment on someone else or what their current role's detail is, you can kind of tell what their general priority is and have an intelligent question about today and this week and this quarter's priority as soon as you get a chance, or even via email. And then also the personal interest, not just like the old get in their office, because we don't get in their office very much, but not just like, oh, he likes football, or oh, he likes basketball, or she likes theater, she likes soccer, or whatever the case may be, but really learning their angle at those things and their feelings and thoughts about those, which surprisingly they share a lot of times online with the selections and choices they make. And then finally, to figure out what your promise is. And in the old days, that was a selling proposition, a unique selling proposition, USP. But today, I think it's what we've been talking about. It's, look, I don't know if I'm going to get any money of yours, but I am going to help you because we just interacted as a human being. And whatever I can bring today and maybe next year, I'm bringing, because that's what needs to happen in this world. And that's going to get people to talk to us and have long because they're so busy, they don't have time for the sales, like you discussed with your last prospect just yesterday. So it brings up another question. What is the role of getting to know new people, what people sometimes call networking? There's a set of different angles on that I'd like to explore. What is the role of getting to know new people in the workplace today, do you think, even outside of sales?
Yeah, I think it's critically important, and it is becoming more difficult, right, in a virtual world to make and establish those relationships. But I do think it goes back to taking a genuine interest in what motivates other people, right? And I learned this the hard way when I moved from a salesperson into my first management role, actually at Dell. And I very quickly learned that just wanting to move up and become a manager wasn't a good reason, right, to want to do that. Because I had success as a salesperson, and I came in, thinking, hey, I'm going to make everyone just like me, right? And I ran into a brick wall with that approach, right? And so it was a very, very painful change in me, both professionally and personally, because I was second guessing, hey, again, did I make the right decision? Why did I want to become a manager? And what I learned, and I think is relevant to your question, is everybody's motivated by different things, right? And as I moved up and took on new challenges, I had technical people, I had engineering people, I had other roles within a company versus just sales, and they're all very motivated, very focused, but they're not driven by the same things that salespeople are. And so I think that experience is super relevant in that people are motivated by different things, and learning about them and learning about their interests, learning about what motivates them, and relating in commonality around experiences, I think is an important aspect of that as well. So it is challenging in this time to make those deep connections that we have in the past at trade shows or industry events, or different things where you get to spend a couple days with people. But I think you definitely have to continue to focus on your network and really caring and really taking the time to understand what people care about and what motivates them is a key to success in business, in leadership, and in sales.
Yeah. Let's turn all that to the people that work for you, since you brought it up. So I noticed that you spent years formally advising others on how to do sales and marketing. And then I also noticed that you had a previous employee, John Mix, or a colleague, Gary Price, whatever the case may be, that said really positive things about your mentorship, which I think is huge in work life. And so if you could talk to me a little bit about your mentors, and then why you've done so much of that, and what your philosophy is on being a mentor to others.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate in the course of my career, having some tremendous mentors who I still speak with on a regular and consistent basis, right? I think it's the role of mentorship, is critically important, especially as leaders. We're making decisions that have major impacts not only to ourselves but to entire companies or entire groups of people within a company. And so having the ability to go back to somebody who's done it before, maybe made some of these tough decisions, and how they came to these decisions, and what were the things that they looked at, what type of data did you analyze before you made this type of decision. And so I still rely heavily on my network of mentors. But when I did struggle in making that jump from individual contributor, kind of hotshot sales rep to manager, I ran into that brick wall, and I said, I have to rethink my entire career now. And I think it had impacts on my personal life as well, where I realized, like, hey, everyone's not like me, and everyone's not going to work like I work, and that's okay, right? And that was very challenging for me to learn that hey, that's okay. And so I think it's important as leaders to establish some baselines and some processes and some non-negotiables that are expectations of the job, but also allowing people to be creative and unique in how they tackle those processes, or their approach to communication, their approach to engaging with others, is really, really important. And so that was the big thing that I took away from my challenge, and it lasted about a quarter, right, where I was just rethinking, wow, how do I do this job? Because I didn't have any management training. I didn't have any, a lot of support. It was just like, all right, you've asked for this promotion. We gave it to you. Now go. Right. And so I really had to just, kind of innovate my way into being a good leader. And the way I did that, was, being an advisor. Right. And, being really clear with people who are on my team, what our mission was. What does our journey look like? What are we trying to achieve as a unit, as a team, as a company? How are we aligning our goals, to the company strategy? And getting people really bought in and excited and passionate about that journey. Because again, I had learned, right, when people are bought in and passionate and excited, they can do tremendous things. And so first it was cast my vision and let's get everybody excited and bought in. Establish, clear expectations and be very clear on our processes and what the results need to be, right? And then work with everybody individually on how they were going to achieve these goals in their own way. And then from there, it's coaching. And a funny story about John, we worked together at Dell. We both got acquired into Dell. But before Dell, we were competitors. I worked at a company called Equalogic. He worked at a company called Compellant. And I remember back in those days, you would go into the front desk and you would go to the sign-in book, and I'd go in and I would actually go back and see, which one of my competitors was here, and I'd see John Mix's name all the time. And so we knew each other in that way as competitors. He won some, I won some. But we both ended up at Dell together. And I remember when we announced the Compellant acquisition, I called him and I said, John, this is Sean Milner. He's like, man, I've been wanting to talk to you for so long. I've been seeing your name around town, blah, blah, blah. And from that point forward, we had just a tremendous relationship. And he was always surprised that I called him so soon. But I was just curious. I'm like, this guy is very successful. I want to learn from him, and how he has been successful. And so we worked at a couple different companies together, at Dell, and then we went to Longview Systems, and then to a startup company together at Zerto. And we've been very, very close, throughout those years. But it's really coaching, right? It's listening. It's allowing people to vent some of their frustrations. Maybe they had a bad day, and just listening, and then helping, right? Like, I've got this big deal. Can you help me win this large opportunity? And what do we need to do to work together to get things done? And my approach has always been to work as a team. And so no matter how many layers of management I had in my career, kind of between the field and myself, I've always wanted to jump in and help people be successful and always be available in providing guidance and feedback and being candid with that feedback. Sometimes you have to have difficult conversations with people, and they do appreciate that if you handle it in a professional and candid manner.
You bring up a point there where you're working with these people and insights are exchanging between two people, and neurons are working together between both, and innovation has been espoused to be a really important part of selling, marketing, or any customer facing. It's also a big aspect of lean. Lean doesn't do a very good job getting into actually how to do creative innovation. It's more of a streamlining, a standardization, a cost reduction. But when you are trying to help people out in the workplace, whether it's their people we call target markets, or it's the contact in their personal job, or the buying committee in each of their various roles that are very different, what role do you think coming up with really effective ideas rather than brainstorming and diverging into the possibilities and converging on the strategic elements that could really help them? What role does innovation play in a job like yours?
It is, if not the most important, one of the most important aspects of success in modern day sales, right? And that comes from innovation from technology, right? Like the sales tools and the products that are out there to help people become educated on their customers or their prospects is exponential, right? Just the ability to do research, looking at companies' financial statements, again, looking on LinkedIn, to your point, and understanding their professional background and knowing, seeing if you know people in common, right, who can help you connect with someone you don't know yet. All the way through, the tools to processes, right? I mean, we prospect very differently today, again, than when I started, or even what we were doing 10 years ago. Again, you have to fight through the noise, right? Let's face it, I get bombarded. Mark, I'm sure you get bombarded. Probably everybody who's listening right now is bombarded by someone trying to sell them something, right? And so breaking through that noise, letting your humanity, come through in a call or an email, and then your professionalism as far as, hey, I noticed this about you, or I noticed that about your company. Here's how I've solved, similar challenges, or helped accelerate other opportunities with other customers. I'd love to speak to you about how we could help you in this way, right? Just to our approach of how we email or text or call prospective or existing customers has changed dramatically. And I encourage my teams. We prospect together as a team on a weekly basis. We start every prospecting day. We dedicate Tuesdays to prospecting. We start off in the first part of the morning. Hey, what's everybody trying today? What are you going to do differently today? What blogs did you read? What podcasts did you listen to? And what are you going to implement? Right. And then at the end of the day, we meet together as a team. And it's like, how did that work? Did it fail? Why did it fail? Was it successful? Why was it successful? And so together as a team, planning and then debriefing, on what worked and what didn't. And so even in a year, from what we start as, prospecting at the beginning of the year to the end of the year is unrecognizable. And different, just because we're having to continue to innovate on a daily basis to stay relevant to our target audience.
That's an amazing practice. That's really inspiring. It's really what should be done. A weekly basis, at least spending an hour. How can we get better? And doing some of the essential exercises that deliver real ideas rather than just thinking and limiting it to that. It's really a great exercise you describe. Tell me a little bit about your transition. You've also had to face a pandemic, and a year before a pandemic, and now that we're post-pandemic, we're all kind of sick of talking about what happened before. But I want to just for a minute, because it's so illustrative about how people get stuck and pivot and break through. Tell me about your personal life, in a work sense at least, about pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post. Yeah,
it's a very interesting contrast. As a sales leader and a business leader, pre-pandemic, I was traveling every single week, and being on the road is great, and it's terrible. It's great in that you get to be in front of amazing people, learning a tremendous amount about their business, about them, going to dinner, having conversations and going to events, and the hustle and the bustle was amazing. But it doesn't come at a cost in your personal life. And so, I have two kids who are very, very athletic, very into sports. And so I missed a lot of their games. I missed a lot of their practices. I missed some of their school events. And so, that weighed heavily on me, right, as a father and as somebody who loves my family. But it had to be done, right? And so fast forward to the pandemic, and, every day is, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Zoom calls. And I was going stir crazy, just like, get me on a plane to New York, please. So from going to, being completely sick of travel to having no travel and longing to go somewhere was an interesting mental and physical transformation for me. And so I think, in my opinion, we're going to probably post-pandemic go somewhere in the middle. I think we've all realized the value of Zoom meetings. We all know the value of in-person meetings, and I think much more balance across those two, in-person versus virtual. will ultimately be where we settle. And I think that that's a good work-life balance for everybody. To have that kind of two extremes and correcting kind of in the middle. And so it's been awesome to watch, once sports came back during the pandemic, be there, be present, and be home every night with the family has been awesome.
Yeah, nothing replaces proximity. We take a little bit of progress and save some efficiencies, and yeah, I think everyone will end up in a hybrid. We've become better because of it, I think, and yet if we stay completely isolated, that's a big problem, and is proving to be for some. A couple more questions, then I'll let you go. If you're in a normal cube or office or at a home office doing a more operational role, selling is the last thing that you want to do, and it's not your job and such. But I've formed the opinion over a few decades of a career that if someone wants to get ahead in their current role, in their current job, I think the number one thing they can do is stop seeing themselves as a non-salesperson. For example, we all have friends and neighbors and extended family, and immediately when I say that sentence, people have the hair rise up. I'm not going to talk to my friends about my work and business. And I would never propose that. I see those as the golden geese in our life, and I have a process where I sort through these and we look at them in different ways, and we never sell to them. In fact, we never even tell them about our company unless it's just a basic introduction. But what I do recommend to salespeople that I think should be done actually in all cubes and offices that want to do better for customers, clients, and their own family and career is that they look at these golden geese. They look at their contacts, again, not just the common contacts on LinkedIn or some social media, but the people that are down at the bottom that they really know, they really have some familiarity with and have worked with or competed with like you did. And reach out to those people, but before they do all the preparation that we've been discussing about one of their contacts, someone that would be interested in our offering, not to sell them, not, hey Jane, I want to sell your best friend Jan. I mean, it's not that. It's not friends and family of old mobile phones. What I'm suggesting is they do the work to figure out what that second, that friend's priority, what their personal interests are, all the things about them, and find one thing that they could absolutely help with, that they even if they don't make any money, even if they don't sell anything, and then figure out the questions that are really smart business person questions, not salesperson, not operational person, not IT person, business person, smart questions, and have 2 or 3 levels deep of those so that you can call your friend Jane and say, hey Jane, I noticed you know Jan when I was looking out online, and I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask her about that industry. I won't bore you with them, but they involve X, Y, and Z a bit. And I'm wondering if you could make an introduction. I'm wondering if I'd buy lunch, would you be willing to go to breakfast or lunch and just let me learn from them about their business, because we're doing some things at our company that would be related. And I'm not selling, I'm just going to learn. It's going to be a wonderful personal discovery at breakfast, lunch, or meetings, or a phone conversation, conference call, if that's all that's available, or a Zoom. But as much as I can get up the ladder to proximity and closeness and business smarts and just leave it at learning, all of a sudden I'm reconnected to the one, I know the next person, and then if I see that there's actually an opportunity and the relationships and a couple of weeks have passed, then I can say, hey, you interested in this? If not, it's fine. I just heard something that might make sense. I don't know why operational and other cubes and office people that want to get ahead don't recognize that the top lines are so dang important to a business that if they got involved and showed some oomph, that they would be esteemed in a completely different category than just their little role with their 15 or 5 bullets on their job description. Tell me what you think about that. Is that crazy talk?
It's not at all. And I've had the great fortune of working with and having very talented operational people work for me, right? So my purview hasn't just been focused on sales. I've had broad responsibilities, in ops as well, and I think it goes back to to innovation, right? If you can align, and I've worked with thousands of technology, information technology professionals throughout the years, right? And working with them, and what I've seen in that space in particular, in technology, is the alignment between IT and the business has never been closer, right? So, CIOs today are very focused on business outcomes and aligning technology to those business outcomes way more than they were 10 years ago when they were trying to keep the lights on, right? Keeping the servers up, making sure that the network was, was connected. And so I see that across, the entire spectrum, right? Is how can you challenge yourself as a business person to align better to the company strategy? And typically, the most important thing, whether you're in a startup company or a publicly traded company, is growth, right? Top line revenue growth. And so, being bold and innovative about process improvements, or leveraging your network, or, learning something about your company, or learning something about, an industry where people, maybe you worked at a company, in healthcare prior to the company you're at now, understand, hey, how do we position ourselves in the healthcare space, right? And then taking what you learn and then applying that even to, to people at your old company. I think there are tremendous opportunities for, kind of the operations people to have a meaningful impact on the top line growth of their company, both within the purview of their day-to-day jobs by, process improvements and operational efficiency and doing things in a better, faster way, and then also leveraging their network. And, the most successful companies I've been a part of, the adage is everybody is in sales.
They just don't understand what that means if they're in a cube usually. Like, okay, you brave people that do it all the time. I get that you want us to do it, but what am I supposed to do? Go sell my aunt? Like, they just need a step-by-step. And I think the very first step that I've seen is the vast majority of people out in the workforce are really intent on doing an amazing job on the 5 to 15 bullets in their job description. I can say with a lot of confidence that the very first step is you have to wander outside those 5 to 15 bullets on your job description. Go find 2 max opportunities that you could absolutely hit out of the park if you invested a little pet time, even your own time, and bring those 1 or 2 bullets into your job description. And now you got 7 or 15, and you get rid of one so that you don't kill yourself that isn't delivering much value to the company or clients. And that's where people can get unstuck. That's where they can have a breakthrough, is just being willing to take that little walk outside the bullets on their job description. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I've seen, I've seen a lot of people get ahead in being differentiated as professionals, right? So, my old adage is, do the job that you want, right? Like, so take on those tasks, tackle those challenges or those opportunities, and yeah, an incremental approach can have a huge, impact to how people in the business view you and differentiate you as a professional. And I think opportunities abound for people who are willing to take those leaps of faith and create, whether it's, again, processes or bringing relationships to the company that weren't there in before. Those are the little things that add up to, finding yourself in the next new, exciting, challenging position.
Let me ask you the last question. The last question is, if you had to look back on your career and think about all the things that you've experienced, and you had to tell someone entering the workforce that's going to face a situation where they feel a little bit slowed down, stuck, obstructed, whatever, locked, and You had to give them advice about how to get unstuck. And then you also had to give them advice on how to be creative and innovative enough to break through and really run past to excel. What advice would you give about those two situations? One thing each.
The biggest advice, is you're going to face adversity. You're going to face self-doubt. You're going to come up against challenges that you weren't taught or you don't know how to solve. And be introspective about those challenges, but be bold and decisive once you figure out how you're going to solve those challenges, and just plow through it. I mean, it's really just kind of sticking to your guns. But I do believe in introspection. I believe in, I call it a timeout. It's like pause. I'm going to go breathe. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to trust my intuition. Right. And usually your gut isn't going to mislead you on the right way to handle those situations. But, you're going to have adversity, and how your career goes is how you're going to handle that adversity, and doing so in a calm and cool and, professional manner makes all the difference in the world. So, that's first and foremost. And really it's, to me, it is the value of hard work. That's like universal, right? Like that's since the beginning of time. You have to put the work in order to get the results. That's table stakes. That's a given. But adding the creative element is the second part of that recipe for success, and trying new things. And one of the things I love about startups and a lot of the success that I've had in my career in the startup space is try new things, and you're going to fail, and that's okay, but fail fast, right? And don't double or triple down on things that aren't working. Just move on. and so that, that took me quite a while in my career to learn the hard way. Is, some things just aren't going to work, and maybe that's a company, maybe that's a role, maybe that's a process. Don't be so married to anything that you can't cut bait when clearly you're not successful.
It's excellent. It's excellent. Before we say goodbye to you, I just want to tell you that I really appreciate who you are. The people that work for you say, this guy takes care of people, and he's taught me like a mentor and never stopped listening. And it's really something that I'm grateful for, because I have had both types of leaders, and I think that people like you are tremendously valuable, not just to your company, but to life and the economy and such. So to say goodbye, tell us a little bit where we can find you personally. Tell us a little bit, just as much as you're willing, about your family, just a few seconds, and then tell us where to find you professionally and what you do and how to get a hold of you.
I appreciate your comments there, and to me, business is people, right? And so those relationships are really all that matters. For my side, I'm in Broomfield, Colorado, which is kind of in between Denver and Boulder, in the Denver metro area. Native of Colorado, and have two tremendous kids. One a sophomore in high school, one in fifth grade, and an amazing wife. Find me on LinkedIn, Sean Milner. As you mentioned, I'm at Avochato, and you can check us out at avochato.com as well.
Thank you so much, and have a great week.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed it, please share this episode with a friend that needs a breakthrough. Post this on social media and add my website, or tag my YouTube page, or just text markspencercook.com to a friend, or message that link on Instagram right now. Also, make sure to subscribe on my site at markspencercook.com to stay up to date on all the latest advice on how to unstick priorities to create breakthroughs. I'm so grateful that you listened today. And remember, you have people rooting for you. They love you and want you to make your breakthrough. That includes us too. Take the first step. Now, you know what time it is. It's time to go create a breakthrough for your work in life. And we'll see you there.